What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're doing the review of the Under Armour HOVR Rise. So I had initially picked this shoe up to supplement my review of the HOVR Apex when it came out. I just wanted to see what the differences were between the two shoes. They actually came out at the exact same time, and these ones just kind of got overshadowed by the larger releases at that time. And initially, I was not blown away by the HOVR Rise. I kind of went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to do a review on the shoe. But I stuck to it. I kept on picking it back up and using it randomly. And I found that the more that I used the shoe, the more I liked it. Initially, like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I still don't think it's the greatest training shoe, but I don't think it's awful either after using it for an extended amount of time. Like I said, this came out at the same time that the HOVR Apex came out. But anyways, they share a lot of the same design cues, but they don't look exactly the same. I actually think from a looks perspective that this resembles a training shoe more than the HOVR Apex does, because that's like a ginormous shoe, and this kind of has a more low profile look to it. So the upper has a couple different things going on. It's a very, very busy looking upper. So first off, you have a couple different mesh materials on the shoe. There's a more heavy duty mesh around the ankle collar part of the shoe, and then it intersects in the middle part of the shoe, and then there's a softer forefoot midfoot mesh. Both of the two materials both have 3D printed overlays on top of them. Mainly to give the shoe a little bit more structure and stability. So there's more overlays at the back part. There's one printed under, and then there's one that's printed on top of that that mainly goes around the heel portion of the shoe. Then there is also another TPU heel counter on both sides of the shoe. And then on the forefoot section, there are lines that are printed upwards from the outsole, midsole of the shoe, to keep the shoe flexible but give you a little bit more lateral stability around this area of the shoe. And then there's a little bit of an overlay at the toe box of the shoe, which does come to a point. Breathability in the shoe has been excellent. I thought the comfort of the shoe was very, very good. They're extremely flexible. They're actually really light feeling on your feet, and they almost kind of feel like running shoes, and we'll get back to that a little bit later. The tongue of the shoe is slightly padded. It's not minimal at all. The laces are actually pretty good, and they kind of have this flywire type lacing system going on at the bottom two laces, and they go up, and then one intersects with the rear overlay to give you a little bit more of a secured fit around your ankle, and then there is a little heel pull loop. The drop on this shoe is an 8mm drop, which I am not a huge fan of. To me, it's like they took a running shoe and they slapped some stability or structure bits onto it and called it a training shoe, which I, in my opinion, think is pretty much the case for the HOVR Rise. But the HOVR cushioning on the shoe is good. It's very comfortable, though it is a little squishy and it's not the most responsive when it comes to lifting. And then when you get to the under part of the shoe, there is a full-length rubber outsole, and then there are some flex grooves at the toe box. The grip on the shoe has been excellent as well. And then there's this little pod right here, and I'm assuming that's pretty much just to give yourself a little bit more lateral stability, but that is actually made out of the same rubber as the other rubber that covers most of the outsole of the shoe. The insole on this shoe is not removable, and the weight is pretty good. It's 10.6 ounces for a men's size 9.5. So when you go to size your HOVR Rise, I'm gonna say go with your normal training shoe size. These ones fit extremely true to size, better than any Under Armour shoes that I have personally encountered fit my feet. They are not narrow, unlike most Under Armour shoes are. And if you were to say anything, I would say that they actually fall a little bit more on the wide side. There's a pretty good amount of space in the toe box. The toe comes to a point which I really like because that accommodates my Morton's toe very comfortably. And what I really like about these shoes is that they are fairly neutral shoes. There's no arch or anything. They don't try to push your feet in any direction. And I find that comfortable when training in these shoes. So going back to what I said about these pretty much being a running shoe that they slap some stability pieces onto to make a training shoe, I'm gonna say that that is exactly what the HOVR Rise are. It feels like they took the HOVR Sonics, put a more beefy upper on top of it, and pretty much called it a day. Some people are gonna like that about this shoe. Some people are not gonna like that about this shoe. I think the best part about this shoe is that they are great for running. They're comfortable on the feet. They're pretty good for plyometric movements, burpees, box jumps, double unders. I would stay away from using these from heavier lifts, though I did put up some pretty good back squat weights in these shoes. I have seen them used at a fairly high level for Olympic weightlifting, but in my case, I thought that they were pretty god awful when it came to like cleaning or snatching. Probably better for cleans, not so good for anything that you're gonna be putting weight overhead. If you're doing slower lifts, just like standard overhead presses, these should be fine. But your dynamic lifts like jerks and snatches, I'm gonna say stay away. These are gonna be awful for those movements. For squatting movements where you can kind of hunker down, these are gonna be fine up to a certain degree. I think that they're not the most responsive shoe, but for what most people are gonna be doing inside of the gym, I'm gonna say that it's gonna be fine. The drop and the amount of midsole cushioning is not great for deadlifts. You can deadlift in them. I have, but I would not do any heavy weights. I probably max out about 400 pounds in these shoes, somewhere around there. But it really just depends on the person. As an overall day-to-day training shoe, I actually think that the HOVR Rise are pretty good. They're not as stable as the Project Rock 2s or the HOVR Apex, which are excellent for lifting certain things. Like they're probably better for back squatting. They're a little bit more stable laterally. But when it comes to just training in a whole, I think the HOVR Rise are probably better than the HOVR Apex, which were like the marquee shoe. Like I said, those are a little bit more stable, but these are overall better. They blend more things that you're gonna do in a gym more comprehensively than the HOVR Apex do. They're flexible, they're lightweight, they're comfortable. You can do the majority of lifting movements in these shoes. Most people probably are not gonna be using these for Olympic lifts, so I'm not even really worried about that. And for $100, I think the value of these shoes is pretty